The silence of space was broken only by the soft hum of machinery and the endless flow of data on the monitors. Inside the lunar observatory, Dr. Ilara Kessler, one of the leading astrophysicists of her generation, stood in front of a massive holographic display. Her hands hovered above the console, manipulating data streams with swift, practiced motions. It had been another routine evening of tracking cosmic anomalies, until something unexpected happened. A signal appeared, one that shouldn't have been there. Ilara blinked and leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowing. At first it was faint, a low-frequency pulse buried under the static noise of deep space. She'd seen odd signals before, but this one was different. It repeated. It was structured. It was too precise to be random. "Where is this coming from?" she muttered, tapping on the coordinates embedded in the data. A glowing map unfolded before her, showing the origin point in the far reaches of the galaxy. Beyond the outer rim, in a sector that had been mapped only sparingly, lay an area known as the Obsidian Belt, a dark, uncharted region of space marked by dense cosmic dust and black holes. It was a place that even the most seasoned explorers hesitated to venture into, for it was said to be a graveyard of lost stars, where any ship unlucky enough to wander too close would be swallowed by the void. But the signal was unmistakably coming from there. "Ilara, what's going on?" The voice of her colleague, Dr. Marcus Treadwell, crackled through her earpiece. "There's a signal," she replied, her voice tight with uncertainty. "It's coming from the Obsidian Belt. It's structured." The pause on the other end of the line was heavy. "Are you sure?" "That's a graveyard, Ilara. No one's been able to get near it without losing contact." "I know, but this signal, it's something different. I need to dig deeper." Tapping a few more keys, Ilara filtered out the noise and focused on the data. The signal oscillated in a way she'd never seen before. It wasn't just static, it was a pattern, something deliberate, and that meant it had to be artificial. "Marcus, I need you to pull up a team. We're going in." The next few hours passed in a blur. News spread quickly throughout the scientific community. The lunar observatory had detected something strange, and soon a flurry of excitement followed. Yet, as much as Ilara tried to ignore the mounting pressure from the media and various government factions, she remained focused on the task at hand, deciphering the origin of the signal. Days turned into weeks as Ilara, Marcus, and the team at the Lunar Observatory worked tirelessly to analyze the transmission. The signal was not only consistent, but it was also layered with complex frequencies far beyond anything humanity had previously encountered. It was almost as if it was calling out to them, beckoning them towards something hidden in the void. The breakthrough came when Ilara managed to isolate a set of repeating mathematical sequences within the signal. The sequences resembled star charts, but their structure was far more sophisticated than anything humanity had ever mapped. These coordinates led them to an exact location, a small cluster of planets and debris, the very heart of the Obsidian Belt. "What are we looking at, Ilara?" Marcus asked, his voice still tinged with disbelief as he stared at the readout. "We're looking at something beyond anything we've ever seen," she replied quietly, her mind still struggling to process the data. "The signal is pointing to an artificial construct, a structure, and not just any structure. It looks like a fleet, the journey to the Obsidian Belt." The decision was made swiftly. The United Earth Council, which governed human space exploration, immediately authorized a manned mission to investigate the source of the signal. A research vessel, the Horizon, was prepped and dispatched with the best minds humanity had to offer. The team aboard included engineers, physicists, archaeologists, and a full array of support personnel. Their mission was clear: find the source of the signal, understand what it was, and return with as much data as possible. The journey to the Obsidian Belt was long, stretching across millions of miles of empty space. It would take nearly 3 months for the Horizon to reach its destination, and in that time the crew had little to do other than monitor the signal and prepare for the unknown. Ilara spent most of her days in the ship's command center, analyzing every bit of data she could, trying to figure out the origin of the structures that the signal led to. "It's too perfect," she said one evening, staring at a holographic map of the Obsidian Belt. "I've been studying these coordinates for days, and they don't add up to anything natural. They're too ordered, too precise. Whoever or whatever built this, they knew exactly what they were doing. Marcus leaned in from behind her, rubbing his eyes. Do you think we're dealing with an ancient civilization? It's possible, Ilara said, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. The scale of what we're looking at, though, it's beyond anything we could have imagined. The crew continued to track the signal, and when they finally reached the coordinates, they were stunned to find nothing but a dense field of cosmic dust. The ship's sensors were nearly useless in this part of space, but just as they were about to turn back, one of the engineers aboard the Horizon, Lieutenant Sophia Chen, noticed something odd on her screens. There's something here, she said, her voice shaky with excitement. I'm picking up massive energy signatures. They're buried deep within the dust, but they're there. This isn't just debris, it's something huge. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She turned to Marcus, who was already on his way to the ship's observation deck. Prepare for descent, Ilara ordered. Let's see what's hidden in this dust. The awakening as the Horizon descended into the heart of the Obsidian Belt, the crew saw something that defied logic. Beneath the layer of cosmic dust lay not one, but a cluster of enormous structures. They were gargantuan, far larger than any space station or colony humanity had built. The closest one was the size of a small moon, its shape vaguely reminiscent of a ship, but on a scale that made Ilara's breath catch in her throat. It's a fleet, she whispered. But these were no ordinary ships. The hulls of the vessels were covered in strange pulsating patterns, glowing in hues of blue and green, giving off an eerie, otherworldly light. They were ancient, yet seemed to hum with latent power. The design was unlike anything humanity had seen before, elegant, vast, and inexplicably alien. We're not just looking at ships, Marcus said. We're looking at planet-sized starships. The realization hit the crew all at once. These weren't exploration vessels or transport ships. These were warships, designed for something far grander than anyone could have imagined. The structures were so large that the Horizon appeared as a speck in comparison. We have to get closer, Ilara said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming sense of awe and fear. Let's see what's inside. The crew worked quickly, deploying drones to scout the structures from the outside. As the drones closed in, they detected massive energy readings, flickers of dormant power beginning to stir beneath the ship's surface. They moved further in, circling around the massive ships, looking for any sign of entry. After hours of scanning, they found it. An enormous door, unlike any hatch or airlock they had ever encountered. It was perfectly smooth, as though it had been carved from the same material as the ships themselves, and it seemed to glow faintly from within. We've found an entry point, said Chen, her voice trembling. Ilara looked at the door and then at her team. They were all silent, knowing that what they were about to uncover could change everything. But one thing was clear. They were on the edge of something profound, something that might either lead to humanity's salvation or their destruction. Without hesitation, Ilara ordered the team to begin preparations for entry. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a darkened interior. What lay inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. Massive chambers stretched out before them, filled with strange machinery, alien artifacts, and intricate systems far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. The air was thick with an ancient, almost metallic scent, and the walls were covered in alien symbols, symbols that hummed with an unknown energy. At the center of the chamber stood a throne-like seat, where a colossal figure lay dormant. The being was humanoid, but its features were unlike anything human. Its skin was an iridescent shade of silver, and its elongated limbs were encased in intricate armor. Its eyes were closed, but the energy surrounding it seemed to pulse with life. Ilara stepped forward, her heart racing as she approached the figure. This was the moment of truth. The discovery that could alter the course of human history. We've found them, Ilara whispered, her voice reverberating in the stillness. The creators of these ships. But who had they been? And why had they abandoned such an extraordinary fleet? As the ship's dormant systems began to stir, one thing was certain. Humanity had unearthed something far greater than they could comprehend, and in doing so, they had set into motion a chain of events that would reverberate across the galaxy for eons to come. The mystery had only just begun. The Horizon glided silently through the void of space. its sleek hull cutting through the cosmic dust with an eerie precision. Inside, the tension was palpable as the crew sat in their stations, eyes glued to their screens. For nearly a month they had been on this journey, following the strange signal from the Obsidian Belt. And now, as they neared the final coordinates, it was no longer just a mystery. It was a promise of something beyond their wildest imaginations. Dr. Ilara Kessler, the mission's lead scientist, stood at the helm of the command center, her eyes locked on the holographic display that filled the room. The massive ships they had discovered, the planet-sized starships, loomed large in the projections. They were enormous, their sheer scale impossible to comprehend. The largest of them was larger than Earth's largest continents, dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. The horizon appeared as nothing more than a speck next to them. "This doesn't make sense," Ilara muttered under her breath, her hands tracing the edges of the display. "There's no way any civilization we know could have built these. These ships are ancient, and they're not meant for exploration. They were meant for something else." Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Treadwell, approached her from behind, his voice hesitant. "What do you mean? What else could they be meant for?" Ilara hesitated for a moment, her mind racing through the implications. "Weapons. Massive planet-destroying weapons." The words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment no one spoke. Everyone on board had heard the rumors, the whispered fears, but no one had dared to voice them out loud. "Are you suggesting these ships were part of an ancient war?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and dread. Ilara nodded slowly. "I think so. Whatever civilization built these ships, whatever race they were, had power far beyond anything we can even fathom, and for some reason they left them here, in this forgotten corner of the galaxy." Marcus turned away, pacing as the enormity of the discovery began to sink in. "And now we're the ones who've found them. It's almost too much to process." "What are we supposed to do with this?" Ilara glanced back at the holographic map, her thoughts as clouded as the display before her. She had no answers, not yet. The signal had led them to this place, but beyond that they were in the dark. What could possibly be lurking inside these ships? What had happened to the species that created them, and why had they left behind such an immense, mysterious fleet? "We'll find out soon enough," Ilara said. Her voice steady, but deep down a knot of fear began to tighten in her chest. "The next step is getting inside." Aboard the ship, the horizon drifted closer to the massive structure that loomed in front of them. The ship, identified as the largest of the fleet, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, faint lights tracing along the edges of its hull. It was as if the ship itself was alive, waiting. "Prepare the drones," Ilara ordered, her tone firm. "Let's get a closer look at the exterior before we make any decisions about entering." The command was followed swiftly, and the crew deployed a series of unmanned drones, each equipped with advanced sensors to scan the ship from every angle. As the drones drifted closer, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The ships were too perfectly designed, too perfectly constructed. Even the edges of the ships were so symmetrical that they appeared to be crafted by an intelligence far beyond human capability. "Drones are reporting that there are no visible entry points," Lieutenant Sophia Chen, the ship's lead engineer, said over the comms. "Nothing conventional, at least." "Try analyzing the hull material," Ilara responded. "We need to understand what it's made of." Minutes passed as the crew worked to break down the ship's materials. The results were mind-boggling. The ships were constructed from a composite material that was entirely unknown to humanity, stronger than any metal they had encountered, and capable of withstanding temperatures and radiation levels that would normally obliterate any spacecraft. "It's indestructible," Sophia muttered under her breath. "I've never seen anything like it." "Maybe indestructible isn't what we need right now," Ilara replied, her mind still spinning. "We need to find a way inside. We need answers." The drones continued their scans, but they were unable to locate any signs of an entryway. The ship seemed to have no openings, no hatches, no ports of any kind. It was a mystery within a mystery. What kind of civilization builds a ship of this size, this power, and then hides it so completely? "It's like it's waiting for us," Marcus said, standing beside Ilara, his voice quiet. "Like it wants to be found." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. As the horizon continued to circle the ship, one of the drones sent back a signal that was unlike the others. At first it was faint, but as the drone's sensors adjusted, a massive door and entrance perhaps was revealed on the far side of the vessel. It was hidden beneath a cloak of energy that had previously rendered it undetectable. The crew was shocked. The door was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and it seemed to shimmer with an unnatural light. The material surrounding the doorway pulsed with the same ethereal glow that covered the exterior of the ship, almost as if it were alive. "I think we found it," Ilara whispered. Her breath caught in her throat as the reality of what was about to unfold began to settle in. The door was opening. Sophia's fingers danced over her console. "I can't explain it. The energy levels are spiking. The ship is reacting. It's like it's aware of us." The lights in the command center dimmed, and a soft hum filled the room. Outside, the great doors slowly began to open, revealing a dark abyss within. The air around the ship seemed to shift, and the horizon rocked slightly as if drawn by an invisible force. "Is it safe?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with both awe and concern. "I think we have no choice but to find out," Ilara replied, her mind set on what they were about to do. "Prepare for entry. Everyone get ready." The horizon approached the massive door, and the ship's exterior lights flickered in sync with the rhythmic pulses of the vessel. It was like the ship was breathing. The door finally opened wide enough to allow them to pass through, revealing a cavernous chamber that stretched far beyond the ship's size. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of something ancient, something long forgotten. The chamber's walls were smooth, composed of the same unknown material that made up the rest of the ship. Strange symbols were etched into every surface, glowing faintly as though reacting to their presence. Ilara and the team suited up and made their way toward the hatch that would lead them inside. Their hearts raced with a mixture of excitement and fear, for they had no idea what lay ahead. The chamber stretched out before them, a vast hollow space that appeared to go on forever. The only sound was the faint hum of energy from the ship's core. "What are we walking into?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever it is," Ilara replied, her gaze locked on the dark expanse ahead of them. "It's far beyond our understanding, but it's calling to us, and we're going to answer." They moved forward, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. As they crossed the threshold into the heart of the ship, the walls seemed to come alive, and the energy within the walls began to glow brighter, casting an eerie light across the chamber. At the center of the room stood a massive platform, like an altar, surrounded by columns of the same material that made up the ship's hull. And in the center of this platform lay what appeared to be a control console, a relic of the long-dead civilization that had built the starships. Ilara approached cautiously, reaching out to touch the console. As her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy rushed through the room. The walls seemed to pulse, and the ship's systems hummed louder. Then, without warning, the symbols on the walls began to shift, as though forming new patterns. The console activated, lighting up with a soft glow. "This is it," Ilara said, almost breathlessly. "We've found the heart of the ship." The console before her flickered to life, and a holographic projection appeared, depicting an alien figure, a tall, slender being with elongated limbs and eyes that glowed with an inner light. The image seemed to reach out to them, as if communicating across time and space. Ilara's heart raced. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. But what did it mean? What was the message this ancient civilization had left behind? As the projection flickered, the alien figure's eyes seemed to lock onto hers. The room filled with a low, resonating hum, and for a moment Ilara could have sworn that she heard a voice not of words but of thoughts. "We are the Zanthari, and you have awakened us." The room seemed to tremble, and Ilara felt the weight of the moment press down on her. The discovery had only just begun, but it was clear now that this was not just an archaeological find. This was a warning and a call. The Zanthari were awakening, and humanity was now part of their story. And what they would do with that power would determine the future of the galaxy. The room was still as the projection flickered in front of them, the holographic image of the alien figure casting a soft blue glow across the command center. Ilara Kessler's breath caught in her throat, and her heart skipped a beat. The figure that hovered before them was nothing like anything humanity had encountered in the entire history of space exploration. Tall, with long, graceful limbs and skin that shimmered like liquid silver, it exuded an aura of ancient power. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, the expression on its face serene yet deeply unsettling. "We are the Zanthari," the voice said, though no sound passed through the air. Instead, the words seemed to be implanted directly into Ilara's mind, a telepathic transmission that left her momentarily disoriented. "And you have awakened us." The words rang in her mind, and she felt a strange chill creep down her spine. The tone of the voice was neither angry nor welcoming, just patient, calculating, as if the figure knew they would eventually come. It knew they would find it. "What? What does it mean?" Marcus Treadwell's voice cracked, his face pale as he stared at the figure. Ilara took a hesitant step forward, unable to tear her eyes away from the projection. Her pulse quickened as the words reverberated in her mind again. "We are the Zanthari. You have awakened us." "It means we've found something ancient," Ilara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something older than any civilization we know." "Why now?" Sophia Chen's voice came from behind her. "Why reveal itself to us? What do the Zanthari want?" The hologram shifted slightly, the figure's eyes narrowing as if it was listening to their thoughts, feeling their confusion, and then, as though answering the unspoken question, it spoke again. "We did not choose to reveal ourselves. We are the last remnants of a dying race. Our ships are our legacy. They were built to last until the time when our creators no longer walked the stars." There was a heavy pause, and the figure tilted its head, as if considering how much to divulge. "The Zanthari built these ships as instruments of survival. Weapons, yes, but more than that, they were our last hope. We left them here when we could no longer protect them. We hoped they would remain undisturbed until the time came to reclaim them, but that time has not come. Your race has stumbled upon us, and we cannot remain dormant any longer." The implications of the Zanthari's words were as staggering as they were terrifying. The Zanthari had built planet-sized starships, massive war machines that had been designed to be dormant for eons. But now, humanity's discovery had awakened them from their slumber, and the question of what came next loomed large. Ilara's mind raced. "What do you want from us?" she thought, not daring to speak the question aloud. The figure's gaze shifted, its eyes locking onto hers. The telepathic voice echoed in her mind once more. "We do not want anything from you, human, but you will need us, and you will need to understand why we built these ships. The fate of your species is entwined with our past, and you will not be able to escape it." Ilara's breath caught in her throat. It was a warning, but it was also an invitation. The Zanthari had something humanity needed, or so they said, but the lingering question was, what was it? What were these ships capable of, and why had the Zanthari left them behind? The heart of the ships. As the days passed, the crew of the Horizon remained in orbit around the Zanthari ships, trying to make sense of the transmission they had received. The Zanthari ships, massive in their design, continued to pulse with a strange, energetic rhythm, as though they were still alive. The crew had ventured further into the ships, each step revealing more and more about the long-lost civilization that had created them. But despite their awe and fascination, a creeping sense of unease began to settle over them. The ships, with their otherworldly materials and technology, were beyond anything humanity could comprehend, and the Zanthari, though seemingly benign, had made it clear that their purpose was not to help humanity, but rather to prepare them for something far darker. The signal, which had once been a faint whisper in the void, had now grown into a blaring alarm. It had been calling for far longer than humanity had realized, and it was clear now that the galaxy was not as empty as it seemed. The Zanthari ships were not an isolated curiosity. They were a warning, a beacon. "We need to understand their history," Ilara said one evening, her fingers trembling slightly as she scanned the data they had gathered. "These ships were weapons, but they were also meant to preserve a race. We need to know what happened to them. We need to understand why they left." Marcus, who had spent hours poring over the ship's schematics, looked up from his screen. "The technology here is unimaginable. I think we're dealing with something far beyond a simple military force. These ships are capable of intergalactic travel at speeds we don't even know are possible. But the real question is, who were the Zanthari running from? Ilara didn't answer immediately. The thought had occurred to her too. The Zanthari's ships, vast and powerful, had been meant for survival. But survival from what? If they were meant to be the last bastion of their species, why had they been abandoned in the first place? "We need to access the main archives," Ilara said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "There has to be more information on what happened to their civilization, the hidden truth." It wasn't long before they discovered the true nature of the Zanthari's legacy. Hidden deep within the heart of one of the planet-sized ships was a vault, its contents sealed behind a barrier of energy. The crew had been unable to bypass the shield until a breakthrough came through Sophia's engineering expertise. Using the ship's own technology, she managed to breach the energy field, gaining access to what lay beyond. Inside the vault, they found something incredible. An archive of the Zanthari civilization's history. Holographic records filled the space, and the crew watched in awe as images and sounds from a time long gone filled the room. The Zanthari were not just a race of conquerors. They had been explorers, pioneers, driven by a thirst for knowledge. They had traveled the stars, cataloging life and learning from it. But that ambition had led them to a discovery that changed everything. The last record showed an image of a fierce battle between the Zanthari and an unknown enemy, a shadowy force that was vast and consuming. The Zanthari had fought bravely, but it was clear from the archival footage that they were losing. Their enemy had been relentless, leaving nothing in its wake. As the image flickered, the voice of the Zanthari leader spoke one last time, its words filled with both defiance and sorrow. "We were wrong to think we could outlast the darkness. The enemy comes from the deep. It consumes everything. We have sealed our ships as a final act of defiance, but know this, it is not the end. You may think this is a curse, but in truth, this is the beginning of a new era. A new war, and you will face it as we did." The hologram flickered out and the vault fell silent. Ilara's heart raced as the weight of the discovery sank in. The Zanthari had built their ships to survive, to protect against something far worse than they had anticipated. They were trying to escape something. "An enemy we don't yet understand," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Something from the deep." Marcus, who had been silent through the whole ordeal, finally spoke, his voice grave. "They weren't trying to preserve their race, Ilara. They were trying to preserve the galaxy from something worse. They left behind these ships, these weapons, to fight a war that never came. The future of humanity." The truth was now clear. The Zanthari's legacy was not just a series of ships, nor just a record of their fall. They had known what was coming, and they had tried to prepare. "We need to act fast," Ilara said. "The Zanthari's enemy is still out there. We have no idea how far it has spread, but the Zanthari were right about one thing. This isn't the end. It's the beginning." The crew stood in silence as the gravity of her words sank in. They had come to the Obsidian Belt searching for answers, and now they had them, but the answers came with a cost. The discovery of the Zanthari had led to the realization that humanity was far from alone in the galaxy, and the danger they had been preparing for had finally arrived. "We have to warn Earth," Marcus said, his voice resolute. "We need to tell them everything. If we don't, humanity will be unprepared for what's coming." Ilara nodded, her mind already turning to the next steps. The Zanthari's ships, their weapons, were now humanity's only hope. But the knowledge they had gained had only opened up more questions. The war was coming, and humanity was going to have to fight it with everything they had.